President Trump is a Florida resident. I think a lot of his friends, are in Florida. I think he's was a real estate developer. His family's still in real estate development. I think he understands what real estate in particular needs to be successful, which is lower interest rates, lower inflation rates, so people feel confident of buying. The effect in Miami, I think, is going to be positive, but we go way beyond, as opposed to other cities, of the national economy. I just came back from London and Madrid, and the desire for people to own a place in Miami as a second home, or actually thinking of moving when they get to be a retirement age, is immense. My two sons are in a trip to South America, Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico, where the demand for real estate in South Florida is intense. And as we know, and you mentioned, in cities like Chicago and New York, we're still seeing a huge demand for people not just wanting to live here, but moving their businesses here, which is the first time that has happened to South Florida. So instead of this becoming sun and fun, we are becoming a serious city.
Of course, at the Republican National Convention, the most visible signs that his supporters were holding up said mass deportation. And that's been a part of his campaign pledge to the American people who elected him. On the other hand, I mean, just think about how much labor costs would soar if you eliminated the 11 million immigrants who are here illegally. It would just be impossible for you to continue to conduct business, I imagine. So,
and most people need to see that, right? We have a place in Aspen, and I can tell you that 98% of all the people that are in the restaurant business, the hotel business, in the construction business, are immigrants. I would say that a lot of those might not be legal, that are coming to this country for the opportunity. I just cannot see what would happen, if that was stopped. First, the salaries would have to be increased tremendously because there's not enough supply, to meet it. And then, of course, it would have repercussions on inflation and so forth. So I think when quieter, smarter minds get together, I think they're going to really understand this. I think the economy is the most important thing. And I am hoping, Trump is now our president. So I think whether you agree or disagree, we need to all gather behind them and try to do what's best for this country, have hope for this country. We have been in a period that people don't talk to each other. Extremes have become more popular. We need to become much more heading down the middle, listen to each other's ideas, and make the best out of a better solution, to do this. And I think this goes not only for immigration, it goes to health policy, environmental policy, and so forth. We seem to go from extreme to extreme, and I am searching for that middle ground.
George, what about, speaking of the different policies, also trade policy, because it's pretty clear that the right part of the Republican Party, the further right you go, the more protectionist it gets as well. And are you very concerned about what trade policies could look like, particularly when it comes to your business and business in Florida? I mean, a lot of people rely on not just foreign workers, but importing materials.
Well, see, look, you've seen what happens when the supply chain is disrupted, particularly in my business. During COVID, for example, the supply chain was totally busted. We couldn't get all the prime materials that we wanted, and construction costs, exploded. That is passed on to the consumer. Nobody builds a building to lose money. So I am very much anti-isolationist. I think in a free market, in a fair free market, I think that there's some things that we can produce effectively that we need to purchase from abroad, and our technology and the things that we do better, because we have such an advanced, country, are the things that we should be concentrated in. And that all requires a free change of products, services, and so forth between the most efficient producers of whatever it is that you're producing. So, televisions today are coming from, many different parts. Today, to build a whole television here would be, impractical and extremely expensive. So, things like this, I think, are, everybody knows this, so I want sentiment, to take a second place to logic and see what we really need, to expand. We are in such a position, both in the United States, but particularly in South Florida, that we really are attracting the whole world, to come to this. This means growth. This means production. This means employment, and we need to take advantage of that opportunity. Just like we're doing in South Florida, our market in South Florida, we're opening more condominiums, both luxury and middle class, than ever before. And they're all being consumed, and they're being consumed by both cities from, older cities, both from California and the Northeast, and from South America. We have a huge South American market that wants to come here, and now Europeans are starting to show. And we need to show them that we are a stable economy, that we're all going to be and gather for the President of the United States, that this is one country for all. So I hope extremes disappear as much as possible.
George, I want to ask about something less contentious, although for us, interest rates is usually all we talk about.
It's plenty contentious.
What do you think about the rates market right now? I mean, the Fed was on track to cut rates down to, some people thought 3.5% is what John Paulson told Shanali a couple weeks ago. Now it looks like the market is expecting far less aggressive cuts. And maybe if these policies are inflationary, they'll stop completely next year. How much does the real estate industry need those cuts?
We need those cuts badly, right? Remember, there's a huge number of real estate that has been financed, construction and permanent at floating rates. And those floating rates have now, if you build a project and you borrow at 3% and now you're paying 8%, I don't have to tell you what impact that has, particularly if you've overborrowed, right? So there's a lot of people hanging that are waiting for, interest rates to go down. I think the Fed, made the right decision on the 50 basis point. I thought we were going to get another 50 basis points. I think they're looking very closely at inflation. In my opinion, I think inflation has been controlled. I expect further cuts next year. I never thought we were going to get 3 to 4% cuts. So I think it's going to be less pronounced, but I believe that we'll continue to see cuts and we'll continue to see an increase in demand based on people's able to afford, more real estate because of the interest rate costs. But I do not see, a 2 or 3% interest rate cut anytime soon.